Hello YouTube, Dave here again. First off, I want to apologize for the lack of uploads over the last couple of weeks. I'm currently at my in-laws' place. We've been here for the last couple of weeks now. And first we were sort of pet sitting while they were away camping. But we just wanted to stick around for a few extra days and just sort of enjoy other people's company. The apartment that we live in the city gets pretty dang hot, so we're sort of more along the southern part of the province. And it's a little bit cooler, a little bit nicer here. But anyway, I did want to get at least something out this week. And what I was looking at and wanting to do is, since I'm planning on doing a Pathfinder 2nd Edition Buyer's Guide series, continuing with the accessories and then going on into the published adventures, I actually wanted to have full reviews of those published adventures available. So I never did get around to doing a review for the Fall of Plaguestone, which is what we have here. This was one of the initial Pathfinder 2nd Edition releases. It came out alongside of the core rulebook and the bestiary way back during the launch of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and this is a solo adventure, standalone adventure. This isn't part of an adventure path or anything. This is just sort of meant to be an introductory module for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Initially, I was going to do a proper review when this first came out. However, a friend of mine had expressed a desire to potentially run this himself, so I didn't want to read too much into the adventure, but with the pandemic and everything else that's happened and our local game stores still being kind of far away from being able to host in-store events, I figure at this point there's no time like the present to finally get around to reviewing this adventure. So this is a standalone adventure, like I said. It is designed for a fresh group of first level characters, and I believe you can reach up to like 3rd level by the end of at the end of the adventure. This one uses the experience point rewards. It doesn't really have an advancement track like the adventure paths or other things do, so if you want to use experience point rewards, you can certainly do that. If you want to, if you want to use sort of a milestone advancement, then that's also up to you as well. But let's dive into the adventure here. So the first thing is this cost $22.99 US when it first came out, and on the back it says A Troubled Town. A group of new adventurers traveling through the village of Etran's Folly, also known as Plaguestone, must come together to solve the murder of a friend. What starts as a simple investigation quickly turns sinister with the discovery of forbidden alchemy, mutant animals, and a nearby forest rotting away due to a mysterious blight. It becomes clear that if the heroes don't intervene to stop whatever evil is brewing, the fall of Plaguestone is all but certain. The Fall of Plaguestone is the first standalone adventure for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, designed for first-level characters, and it tells the story of how a group of strangers band together to form a group of adventurers while saving the town of Etran's Folly from a terrifying fate, serving as a perfect introduction to a new Pathfinder campaign. So this book is great for people that are looking to get into 2nd Edition Pathfinder for the first time, but if you're someone who also sort of likes to homebrew and run a lot of your stuff, but you want something to sort of help ease you into the rule set, this is what I would recommend this product for. It also does come with a flip mat that you can purchase separately. I did do a video showing this already. I'll try to remember to leave a link to that at the end of the video that you can click on if you want to see the double-sided map in all of its detail there. But that's something to keep in mind as well, that the standalone adventures will typically have a map product to go along with them. So we're going to get right into part 1, a mysterious murder. So at the beginning of this adventure, the player characters don't actually need to have any pre-existing past with one another. It's not required that they are familiar with each other or lifelong friends or grew up together or anything like that. They're just a group of beginning adventurers that are helping to escort a caravan that is being led by a dwarven merchant by the name of Bort. Now, I have to say, this obviously reminds me of like the Itchy and Scratchy Land episode of The Simpsons with the Bort license plates, and whether that's intentional or not, I still kind of feel that that's a reference, and if it's not one that they intended, it's one that I still ended up catching as well. The very first encounter before the characters make their way to Etran's Folly involves them being ambushed by a pack of mangy wolves. So 3 wolves in total. However, they are being led by an individual wolf that has undergone some sort of horrid mutation. The wolf actually has acid breath that it can breathe, and it's constantly like drooling this acidic slime. And you can see on the cover there, that's the wolf that they are referencing there. So this fight is, serves as an introductory, combat encounter to get the players used to the combat system, but it also sets up the storyline going forward with the strangely mutated creature. However, with that behind them, the characters do arrive in Etran's Valley, where the night that they arrive during a festive dinner with Bort and all of the members of the caravan and all several members from the town. Suddenly, Bort begins to feel ill, and he falls over and dies. The rest of the opening chapter involves the player characters investigating and trying to track down the killer, searching for clues, things along those lines. Now, one of the aspects of this that I actually like quite a bit is that it's not necessarily all going to be left up to the player characters. Now, in general, when you're running some sort of investigation section, you do want to give the player characters the bulk of the opportunities to discover things and solve things on their own. But I can also say that it can be very frustrating when, the finding the next clue all relies on, a skill roll, and that skill roll ends up getting blown by the characters through no fault of their own. So in this situation, eventually, as the characters investigate the murder, eventually townsfolk, if something is overlooked, may discover something. So someone may find an empty, glass vial in some bushes outside of the tavern where the meal took place, or there's other things that the townsfolk can eventually uncover themselves if your players are having a bit of a problem on their own. And I think that's actually a really great way to start a fresh group of player characters, because again, it can really be crappy when your storyline can be completely derailed by some blown rolls. So I actually like the fact that the townsfolk aren't just, background and useless. They will actually, discover things eventually on their own if the player characters need a little bit of help. And, and it's a way of doing it without feel like you're, handing stuff necessarily to them, because, it makes sense that someone might be, tending to their flowers or something and find this glass vial that they think is suspicious, and give it to the player characters where they can sort of go from there. Eventually, the characters do track down the identity, or do uncover the identity of the assassin, and make their way to confront them. Now, I don't want to spoil too much for anyone who might be, running or playing this adventure, but let's just say that once that individual is dealt with, either they're killed in combat, or they're apprehended, or even if they manage to get away, the player characters can discover the fact that this individual was actually hired by someone else, and that's going to set up something further down the road with this mysterious individual that simply goes by the initial V. Part 2 of the adventure begins with the elven ranger Nola making her way into town, dragging behind her a sled with the wolf carcasses from the very first encounter for the adventure, back when the player characters were still escorting Bort's caravan into town. She confronts the player characters to find out if they're the ones responsible for killing these wolves, at which point, if they, answer truthfully, or she discovers that they indeed were the ones that killed it, she proposes an alliance with them, because she needs help in getting to the bottom of some disturbing problems involving the forest and the woods and the foliage and the creatures living in the wilderness around Etran's Folly. Trees have been starting to wither and die. Pockets of them in different locations have been doing this, and several creatures have taken on bizarre, strange mutations, similar to what we had with the caustic wolf. She wants to get to the bottom of it, but honestly cannot do so completely and totally on her own, so she asks the player characters to help her. She takes them to a location where she believes the wolves were holed up, known as the Blighted Den, where they encounter some more of these mutant wolves, as well as a polluted pool of liquid that has some of the mutagen in it that's been affecting the foliage as well as the creatures around town as well. So that sort of helps her with that, but she doesn't think that everything's over yet. So she has another idea or another location that she wishes to explore. Now, this cave system or this pen is actually the alchemical workshop set up by a group of orc alchemists, along with some of their unusual experiments. So we have like the stone horse, icy rats, the fiery leopard, as well as some of the orc alchemists themselves, including their leader, the orc alchemist by the name of the Sculptor. Now, the Sculptor, as it turns out, is also working for someone else that he refers to as the Mistress, saying that he's created a coagulated creature that he believes will impress her greatly, and that he's going to take it to Spite's Cradle, to show the Mistress personally. However, he's unable to do that as the player characters intervene before he's able to take it there. But the characters do discover the creature that the Sculptor had created, a monstrosity creature known as a blood ooze, which is an alchemical creature created by combining blood from various humanoid creatures. With that in mind, the characters know that there is still someone out there that's behind the scenes and everything. They haven't found this mysterious V yet, and they haven't found this mysterious mistress yet, but they have an idea of where to go, where Spite's Cradle is, and can move on to the final confrontation. Part 3 has the characters making their way to Spite's Cradle, which is also the location of the main villain of the adventure, Veritys' Lair. So Verily is a female elven alchemist who despises the people of Etran's Folly and is trying to plot their ultimate demise while conducting experiments of her own. Her lair is also guarded by more members of the orc tribe that the alchemists came from that were operating in the pen in part 2. So more of the more martial of the orc members of the tribe are there serving as basically her own personal bodyguard, along with some other unique creatures, including her homunculus, a kind of weirdly adorable creature by the name of Purgy, as you can see him here holding his little wooden spoon. But in addition to encountering this sort of adorable looking creature, the characters also come across some more alchemical creatures, including the Amalgam. So the Amalgam was initially a fusion of the orc tribe's initial leader before Verily ended up taking over, and she fused the orc with a hobgoblin, and then essentially from this point forward, any failed experiments, alchemical creations that she attempted to create but failed at, would essentially just be combined into this horrific looking creature, which we see here. After dealing with that, the characters do finally make their way to confronting Verily herself with her own personal guardian. Again, this kind of weirdly adorable monstrosity creature known as the Behemoth, who, even though he looks like a homunculus, is actually a large-sized creature. But I don't know, I still love the art that we have there. Defeating Verily might seem like the natural conclusion to the adventure, but it is not, because there is a wrench thrown in the works there. As the characters defeat her, she does let them know through sort of an evil, villain monologue that the characters are too late, that she has sent one of her alchemical drudges filled to the brim with this caustic or deadly virus over to the town of Plaguestone, where it plans to get to the center of town, where the stone monolith is, that is generally referred to as the Plaguestone itself, and she plans to have the creature basically detonate itself, explode itself in this magical stone, releasing this virus over the town itself, killing everyone there. The characters now have sort of a series of choices that they have to make. This creature does have a pretty decent sized head start, as it was released before the characters were able to confront Veritys herself, so this has about a 30-minute head start in terms of how far ahead it is from the rest of the party. The characters can try to track the creature down, the Drudge down, that's filled with this virus chemical inside of it, and try to fight it before it reaches the town itself, requiring them to make several skill checks along the way. They can race to town and try to get there before it, or they can try to, again, hopefully catch up to it before it gets to the center of town proper. If the characters manage to make their way into town, they do sort of begin the encounter with the Drudge about 30 feet away from this Plaguestone at the center of the town, and they have to go through the process of trying to stop it. The Drudge will only fight if there's something completely blocking its path. Otherwise, it will just try to make its way to this magical stone at the center of town, where it will put on this magical ring and spend basically its full next round preparing it to detonate and blow itself up. So the characters have to hopefully stop it before that happens. And if it does manage to release it, it does give you the disease information here that you can run, which has an onset of 10 minutes. It requires fortitude saving throws of DC 23 to overcome, again making it difficult for pretty much all of the townsfolk and even for the player characters themselves to overcome, with each stage dealing more physical damage to them before reaching stage 3, in which the characters inevitably die, or the individuals that contracted it inevitably die. So hopefully they're able to stop the Drudge before that happens. If the characters had mounts, or if they were able to secure mounts at the beginning of the adventure, then they can actually arrive in town like 2 hours before the alchemical Drudge with this virulent vapor sort of trapped inside of its body does, giving them plenty of time to set things up and to impede its progress. But if they just simply race it on foot, they arrive pretty much at the same time, with, like I said, the creature slightly ahead. But this does make for a very suspenseful final fight. And even though the boss, the main antagonist, has already been defeated, this actually seems like a pretty high stakes encounter to end things on. So I actually really like that. It's sort of a bit of a slightly variation of the formula of going through the dungeon, defeating the main villain of the chapter, of the adventure, and then everything being over. It's sort of, again, that nice little touch, and I really like the fact that the villain is smart enough to put these things into motion before the player characters even get there or even get to her, meaning that the thing actually does have a decent head start. It kind of reminds me of like the Watchmen movie, where the main villain there started his plan before the heroes even arrived, meaning that even though they tracked him down and were able to fight him or confront him physically, it was already too late. I just kind of like that little bit of a twist there, and I think it makes for a very memorable end to the adventure itself. In addition to that, we do have our adventure toolbox, which has a gazetteer of the town of Etran's Folly in its entirety. So it gives you all the information you need there, including some of the NPCs, some alchemical items that you can find in here, as well as some new backgrounds, side quests, and some new creatures to fight, including that horrific blood ooze that the sculptor had created but was unable to get to Veritys before the player characters made their way to them. And that's basically it. That is the Fall of Plaguestone. So, in my opinion, this was actually a really fun adventure to read. This is someone that I actually honestly really want to run. And had I not started my Pathfinder 2nd edition with the Age of Ashes, I probably would have run this for my first level characters, because I actually really liked this adventure as I was going through it. I love the fact that the sort of what you expect to be like a throwaway first encounter actually leads to something, more serious later on. It actually helps drive the plot at a later point, and with, the ranger bringing these bodies into town, it just kind of creates a sense that the world still, continues to exist after the player characters move from point A to point B. The murder investigation, I think, was also really well done, especially with the option to have NPCs actually be helpful in the investigation if the player characters, end up fumbling some of their roles, or overlook a location to explore. So I think that that was also really well done. The idea of having like the orc alchemists I thought was also really interesting, and the unique creatures like the stone horse and the fire leopard and like the icy bats or icy rats I think they were. It just, I don't know, just overall it just seems like a very interesting and unique set of encounters, even though a lot of them are just sort of standard creatures you would expect to fight at low levels, but they put just that little bit of a twist on them. And I think that that's great. And Veritys herself being a more intelligent villain, putting her plans into motion before the player characters have a chance to stop them, I think was a great twist. And that final encounter where they have to chase down this creature or try to get there before it, to prevent it from destroying the entire town, again, was something that I actually really thoroughly enjoyed. I think that chase section also could benefit from using the chase rules that would later come out in the game mastery guide. So if the player characters were trying to chase down the alchemical drudge itself instead of trying to race to town, then that would be a great system to use. Now, it wasn't developed at the time that this was written, and I think that's probably the reason that it wasn't utilized, but it is something to keep in mind. And if you wanted to pick up the chase cards and have sort of like the wilderness locations there, or the wilderness obstacles for the characters to overcome, if they're able to do so in a set number of turns, then they could actually reach this thing and prevent it from getting to the town itself. But overall, I think that this is a very solid adventure, and if you're someone who wants to, get into Pathfinder 2nd Edition, this is a great investment as sort of an initial experience with that. Again, you can also pick up the map that comes with it if you want to. The map has some of the locations in there. We have, I think it's the Veritys Lair, as well as the location where the sculptor, I believe, was. But it's just, again, it's a great combination and a really excellent way to start or to begin your Pathfinder 2nd Edition experience. So, in the comments below, let me know if any of you have played through or run this adventure as a game master. Let me know how your experiences went. How much did the characters, regret the death of Bort? Do you also think that this was a clear reference to Itchy and Scratchy Land? Let me know all that in the comments below, because like I said, I think that this is an absolutely great adventure, and I really look forward to getting the opportunity to run this, hopefully someday very, very soon. Thanks again for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all next time. Take care.